Well, thank you for coming today. See if it's on. Can you hear me all right? Had a hard time thinking what would be interesting, what would be fun, and fiber wasn't on the list, but here you are, you're gonna talk on fiber anyway. I was gonna call it the poop on fiber, but I worried about my tenure, so I was a little more careful. So we're gonna talk about fiber, hopefully in a way that's interesting and practical, and feel free to ask questions. We're a small group. Yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about fiber in general, and then we'll talk about food sources. And at the end, we'll talk about fiber supplements and the benefits of fiber supplements compared to getting fiber out of food. What is fiber? Fiber, by definition, is the portion of a plant cell wall that humans cannot digest. So fiber comes from food, unless you get a supplement. Comes from fruits, it comes from vegetables, and it comes from grains. Why should we eat fiber? Fiber potentially has a lot of health benefits. If you never ate fiber, you would not develop a deficiency. It's not an essential nutrient. Vitamin C is essential. If you didn't consume vitamin C, you'd get a nutritional deficiency. It would show up as scurvy. All of a sudden, I couldn't think of the word. Show up as scurvy. However, by not eating fiber, we are at increased risk of some problems. And also, by eating more fiber in our diet, we're more likely to experience some health benefits from consuming more fiber. There are some gastrointestinal health benefits, and I'll talk about those on my next slide. It potentially reduces the risk of several cancers, especially intestinal cancers like colon cancer or rectal cancer specifically. It might help us maintain our weight because if we're eating more fiber in the diet, we're probably eating less unhealthy foods. Helps us feel full. There's probably some cardiovascular benefits. It might reduce our cholesterol levels and therefore reduce the risk of heart disease. But the other thing is that foods that contain fiber are mostly fruits and vegetables and whole grains. And there are a lot of things in fruits and vegetables and grains that impart a health benefit for us. In fact, the National Cancer Institute has so far counted over 25,000 bioactive compounds that are found in food. And there's not a medicine cabinet long enough to have that many supplements to get in 25,000 bioactive compounds. When we eat, and most of those there's some that are negative and a lot of are positive, and most of those positive bioactive compounds come from plants. And so we're going to eat more vitamins and minerals when we consume foods that are higher in fiber, and antioxidants and these other compounds that are found in food that probably have a health benefit for us. And by eating more fiber, we're probably eating less junk food, less things that are not healthy for us. Okay, I don't want us to get focused too much on the different structures of fiber, but we usually talk about fiber in two categories. We talk about soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. And I'll say right now, it's pretty hard to eat a food that's just soluble fiber. When we eat foods that have fiber, they have soluble and insoluble. Maybe one dominates more than that. So I hope you're not getting caught up in, well, how do I eat more insoluble fiber? Because I just want you to eat more fiber by eating foods that have fiber in them. When we look at the different types of fiber, the chemical structures of fiber, soluble fiber is gums and mucilages and pectins and beta-glucan and some hemicelluloses. And when we take a supplement of psyllium, we're mostly getting soluble fiber. How do we get food sources of soluble fiber? When we eat vegetables and fruits, barley, which is a grain, and legumes and oats and oat bran, those are particularly high in soluble fiber. Soluble fiber has been, some of these have been shown to lower your cholesterol. And they do that by binding things and keeps it in the intestinal tract so we don't absorb them. Things that have cholesterol in them. Bile, we make bile and we release it into the digestive tract. We reabsorb it. It cycles several times in every meal. And eating oats and oat bran tends to bind that bile, and that reduces cholesterol going back into circulation. And sometimes some of the cholesterol in our diet. So that's that benefit. And the same concept happens on having cholesterol slow down how quickly carbohydrates go into our bloodstream. For people who don't process carbohydrates well, people who have prediabetes or do have diabetes, having cholesterol that carbohydrate that they've eaten, have it enter the bloodstream more slowly provides a great health benefit. And so we don't have this surge of carbohydrate or glucose coming into our bloodstream. It comes in more slowly because fibers get in the way and slowing down how we absorb it. It might take a lot longer into the intestinal tract before we absorb it. So that's a great potential benefit. Irritable bowel syndrome. I won't ask by the show of hands how many have it, but I bet a lot of us in this room do, including me. There's lots of causes of irritable bowel syndrome, but for many people, there can be relief by consuming diets high in fiber, particularly soluble fibers that might provide some relief. Irritable bowel syndrome is the second most common cause of missing work. The first one is the cold. So a lot of us struggle with irritable bowel syndrome. This one particularly might reduce risk of colon cancer as maybe insoluble fibers. Insoluble fiber works a little bit differently. We'll talk about it as we move along. It might reduce the risk of getting something called diverticulosis. This is the one that has a laxative effect, and particularly when we eat wheat and some beans has a great benefit. This might help us feel more satisfied. We don't stop eating when we're full. We stop eating when we're satisfied. How many of you have been full and you still have to have dessert? Or you've gone to a restaurant and you're full, but the main course hasn't come yet. And you're at the restaurant, you're going to eat the main course, and then you're going to eat dessert, and then you'll stop eating. Being satiated is when the brain turns off the drive to eat food. So fiber can help us feel more satisfied. It slows down how quickly the stomach empties, so we feel full longer and more satisfied longer when we eat more fiber. And it also might reduce the risk of colon cancer. Okay, who needs to eat fiber and how much do you need to eat? I've circled or put in red where probably most of you are. For women between 19 and 50, probably around 25 grams of fiber a day. How much fiber we should eat is really based on how many calories we eat. Is this even on? You can hear me? I can't. That's a little better than on my necklace, but then it would make noises. So if you're eating 1,000 calories more, you need another 14 grams of fiber a day more. But the more food you eat, if you're making healthier choices, you're probably getting more fiber. And so don't worry about that. For men, around 38 grams of fiber a day. As we get older, we need fewer calories, so we don't need so much fiber. If most of us would eat more fiber, it would work wonders. The average American eats 14 grams of fiber a day, 10 to 14. So we could all do a little better. And I bet most of us aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables and more whole grains, and that would make a difference too. Let's see. So keep an eye on your number for your age. People who need to go on a high fiber diet should eat another 5 to 10 grams on top of what these numbers are here. Most of us probably don't need a high fiber diet. We need to get to a normal fiber diet and see if the big one we're all thinking about is regularity, right? And see how that might work wonders. And if it doesn't work wonders, then maybe we're going to go a little higher. Okay, so here are the 6 food groups that the government talks about, the USDA. Fruits and grains and vegetables and dairy and protein and oils. And since fiber comes from plants, we're looking at fruits and grains and vegetables. There are plant proteins here like beans, and so they would be a source of fiber. But we're going to talk about these 3 today on how to get more fiber in our diet. Over here, looking at fruits, the recommendation is that we eat fruits, especially whole fruits, and try to eat 2 to 2.5 servings a day. And my next slide will talk about it in more detail. Looking at grains, the goal is that half of our grains become whole. And I'll talk about whole grains versus refined grains in just a minute, and hopefully make that simple enough to understand. Most of us should be eating 6 to 8 servings of grain bread, cereal, rice, pasta, those types of things. And then the other one is vegetables that we'll talk about. And the slogan is to vary your veggies. Try to eat a variety of vegetables. And hopefully I can sell you on that too, because they're beautiful. We need to eat dark green and red and orange colored vegetables. Need to eat legumes, beans and peas on a regular basis. And we need to include starchy vegetables and other vegetables. And try to eat 2 to 3 cups a day. So let's talk about fruit. all the fruits that we enjoy, we should eat. And we can eat them frozen or canned. We can eat them dried. Fruit juice, we should try to go easy on. You know, having a cup of fruit juice a day is great. Usually we get a glass, we fill it full of orange juice. And that's several servings of fruit. And nutritionally, it's great for us, but calorie-wise, it's a lot of simple calories that get in pretty quickly. Fruits vary in what they provide, but they're rich in potassium and fiber and folate and vitamins A and C. Frozen and fresh and canned are all fine. Because when we look at the major manufacturers like Dole pineapple and have canned pineapple, when the pineapple is picked, it's processed at the plant at that time. It's cut, it's put into the cans, and it's cooked so that it's sterile. That locks in the vitamin content. On the other hand, when I eat pineapple that was grown in Hawaii, it gets picked. It's got to get put on on freight. It's got to come across to the United States. It's got to make its way to Utah. It's got to get put to the distributor of my grocery store. It's got to get to my grocery store. It gets on the shelf. I have to buy it, and I have to come home and eat it within a week or so. It might be 2 or 3 weeks, and it's lost nutritional value. I'm not saying it's inferior. We need to eat more fruits and vegetables, but canned and frozen are processed that day, and very little vitamin has been lost. We don't lose minerals, but vitamins can be lost. Okay, again, eat 2.5 cups of fruit a day. I just have a alphabetical list of fruits. Aren't fruits beautiful? You know, I think of section 59 of the Doctrine and Covenants that said, he's given us all these things to please the eye and gladden the heart. We're supposed to enjoy the food we eat. If you're eating things because they're good for you and you don't enjoy them, that's not what we're supposed to do. Find things that you enjoy. One of my challenges to you is add more color to what you eat. Choose red and black and yellow and orange, and just choose a variety of colors. How many of you think you eat enough fruit a day? How many think you're getting 2 servings of fruit a day? Some, maybe not all of us. Okay. If you're buying the exact same fruit every single week, be brave and branch out and choose another color and see if that's helpful. Vegetables, also sources of potassium and folate. Folate's new here, fiber and some vitamins A and C. What's the portion size of vegetables? We should eat a cup of a raw or a cooked vegetable or vegetable juice. If we're eating leafy green vegetables, maybe 2 cups would equal one serving. We should eat 2 to 3 cups a day. So vegetables are broken down into a variety of categories because they offer different nutritional benefits in terms of vitamins. So first of all, we should consume dark green vegetables. Primarily they're leafy. Broccoli's on here. Bok choy is kind of leafy. And then orange colored vegetables. They're very rich in vitamin A, or the precursor of it, called beta carotene. Starchy vegetables we should consume, like corn and peas and potatoes. And then dried beans and peas are considered vegetables. They're also considered protein foods, so that's kind of confusing. And then there's a whole list of other vegetables. They're not particularly, well, they're high in some things, but they don't really otherwise fit nicely into the other categories that we talked about. It's just beautiful. Heavenly Father did not give us black and white food or brown and yellow and white food. We have a lot of colors to enjoy. And those colors provide those phytochemicals that I talked about. They're antioxidants, they're polyphenols. They have all sorts of healthy benefits for us, reduce the risk of cancer. So the fiber might reduce the risk of cancer, but we do know that eating those colored vegetables and fruits do reduce the risk of cancer, reduce the risk of heart disease. Yeah. I've studied nutrition for a long time. And we keep thinking we're clear on a piece of information. We know that saturated fat increases the risk of heart disease. I thought that was kind of in the bag, and it's not anymore. But when you look at what is the most important healthy thing we can do to reduce the risk of the chronic diseases, very consistently, it's eat more fruits and vegetables. And it's not take supplements that have those vitamins and minerals in, and that doesn't reduce the risk of cancer and heart disease and diabetes. It is eating more fruits and vegetables will reduce the risk of these chronic diseases. So pretty impressive. Well, we've even gotten really specific, and if trying to eat more vegetables and be specific is too hard right now, just choose eating some more vegetables. But the recommendation is that we try to eat from dark green vegetables, try to eat 1.5 servings a week. You don't have to have a salad every day. I don't like salad a whole lot, so I almost never choose salad. I'll eat other things. Red and orange vegetables we should eat on a regular basis, almost daily, not quite. Beans, peas, and lentils. If we could eat a cup once a week, 1.5 cups once a week, that would be awesome. Starchy vegetables and the other vegetables, I mean, these are things that we add anyway, onions and things like that to our diet. Questions so far? Good. All right, so remember that number of how much fiber you need to get to a day? Here's a list of just selected fruits. They vary and not really high in fiber to a great source of fiber. Raspberries, how many like raspberries? Berries are coming back in, right? Go to Costco or wherever and they're coming down in price. A cup of raspberries is actually quite high. Blueberries is pretty good. Pears and avocados. As we get down, peaches and pineapple and cherries aren't quite so high. Quarter cup of dates, about 3 grams of fiber. But if we were to eat 2 to 3 grams of fiber, 2 to 3 grams of fruits a day and have a variety, maybe we don't eat raspberries every day. I'm fine with eating raspberries every day. But eating 2 or 3 of these a day would add to your fiber total. And they taste wonderful. Over here, looking at some selected vegetables, green peas, kind of a bean, are extremely high in fiber. Jicama is kind of a thing now. Do you know what jicama is? At the store, they're kind of fun to eat. I just cut them up with carrots and put them in a baggie, and I leave them in my fridge, and I eat them all week long at work, and that's great. Pumpkin's a great source. Pumpkin we usually save for falls. Coming down, tomatoes aren't terribly high, neither are beets or asparagus. But still, by eating more vegetables, we're going to probably add more fiber to our diet. Legumes, this is where you hit the jackpot. Beans and peas are anywhere from 10 to 15, 16 grams of fiber. So eating them once a week, eating 1/2 cup several times a week would add a significant amount of fiber to your diet. Add them to salads. We're getting out of winter, and so chili is not probably our favorite thing, but now it's time for picnics and beans in other ways. I like to make lentils. I make them a lot, and they're very simple. Just rinse them and cook them for an hour, hour and a half, and I often put some sausage with it and carrots and onion, and I'll eat that for, several days, and I'll put some in the freezer and pull it out and eat it. It's a very healthy, very easy way to get more fiber in the diet. Nuts are not terribly high in fiber, but they're kind of like some of the vegetables. Yes? It does not. If you puree it, you'll lose some fiber, but just blending it. So taking beans and making refried beans, you're thinking of something like that maybe? Or making a smoothie, it's all the fiber's still there. That's a good question, actually. Okay, fruits and vegetables, a great way to get in fiber. The next one is to eat more grains. What time do I need to stop? 10:50 or whatever, 10:02. Sounds good. All right, let's do a little bit of education about a grain. Grains could be wheat, barley, rye, tons of them. I've got lists of them. So don't just think of wheat. Wheat is the most common grain that we eat in the United States. But there are there's 3 sections of a grain. And this is called a berry. So I'll try to call it a grain, but I might slip and call it a berry. Actually, there's a 4th, there's a husk that's on the outside, and that gets removed before we try to eat it. If we're a cow, we could digest the husk, but we can't. If we ate grain with the husk on it, we wouldn't get any nutritional value out of it because we couldn't break that husk down. But once that husk is removed, there's 3 components to a kernel. And the first is the outer layer, this brown layer. It's called the bran, and it's edible. That's where almost all the fiber is. It's also rich in antioxidants. It's rich in several B vitamins. When we process and refine grains, we remove the bran. The other thing we remove is the germ. This is the reproductive part of the plant. It doesn't have a lot of fiber in it, but it's got some protein and minerals and B vitamins. It has healthy fats. We also remove that in processing. And so when we're eating refined flour, All that's left is this endosperm in the middle, and it's full of starch. And it's what gives flour its texture. It's what makes bread, have that texture to it, and that's great. And there are some nutrients in it, but we've lost a lot of nutritional value when we take out the bran and the germ. So we learned how to refine flour in the late 1800s, and it was cool because it made a really soft textured bread instead of coarse bread. And now we've come full circle, right? It's not cool to eat soft textured bread. It's cool to eat more coarse bread. And I'll talk about that in a little bit in a minute. But when we remove the bran and the germ, Americans started to get nutritional deficiencies, and it became really obvious during World War II when men were not qualified for military service because they weren't healthy enough. And once that was realized in 1942, we passed the Enrichment Act, and it required that the nutrients that the most important nutrients, the problem nutrients that were removed during milling would be put back in, and that's called enriching. And that included iron and B1, B2, B3, thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin. And that corrected nutritional deficiencies. And then in the 90s, we realized how incredibly important folate was to reduce the risk of neural tube defects, that it became mandatory to be added to wheat as well. And so these are enriched. But products can be fortified too, and that means putting in more that was originally there. So if we look at this is a whole grain, refined grain, and enriched grain. And these are the main nutrients that we're talking about. Here's the green represents how much was in the whole kernel of grain. So the bran and the endosperm were there, and the germ. When it becomes refined, what color is that? Pinkish, salmon colored. So when we refine a kernel of wheat, it loses 92% of the vitamin E because mostly it was in the germ. It loses a lot of the B6 and the magnesium. A lot of this is lost. A lot of proteins retained, folate, 40% was retained. But 75% of the fiber is retained. And so with that Enrichment Act of 1942, these all had to be put back to at least 100%. And if they put in more than 100%, we don't call it enriching, we call it fortifying. So you have orange juice with calcium in it. Oranges don't really make calcium. And so it's fortified with calcium. So questions about that. So we put a lot of riboflavin back in. It has 300% of what was originally there. So there's enriching and there's fortifying. And pretty much all the wheat we eat in the United States, that includes our cereals, are enriched. So those nutrients are put back in, and we're not seeing those nutritional deficiencies anymore. So whole grain. If what we're eating has those three components in it, it's a whole grain. So I can eat a whole berry. I can crack it, I can crush it, I can split it, I can flake it, I can roll it, I can grind it. If all three components are there, it's a whole grain. All right? If I take the bran out, if I take the germ out, it's no longer a whole grain. These are some examples of whole grains. Wheat, there's lots of forms of wheat. There's oats. Popcorn is a whole grain. Brown and that should say wild. I'm sorry, I missed that typo. Barley and rye and cornmeal and buckwheat. Bulgur's really a cracked wheat. Millet, quinoa, and sorghum and amaranth. These are a little more unusual grains. But you could have flour, and it can be a soft textured flour, and it's still a whole grain if all those components are still there. So let me talk about grains. Specifically. So we want Americans to eat whole grains and refined grains, right? We'd like to gradually become more with whole grains, but we want half of our grains to be whole. So let's have whole grains and let's have some refined grains. And it's the minerals that we mostly talked about. So what is a portion size of a grain? It's a slice of bread. It's a cup of cold cereal. It's a half a cup of cooked cereal or rice or pasta. And most of us should probably look at 6 to 8 servings a day. If you're more physically active, then you can probably have a little bit higher than that. So the slogan is to make half your grains whole. which means 2 to 4 servings of whole grain a day, and the other 2 can be refined grains. The best recommendation we have for how much whole grain we should eat a day is 48 grams, and I'll give you some examples of that. But it's hard to find how much is in a product, so we're not going to get too focused on that. But if you eat a piece of bread or you eat some cereal that's a whole grain, 100% whole grain, by definition, it has to have at least 16 grams of whole grain. And so if half of our grains are whole, that will put us around 48, which is a recommended amount. All right, here's some pictures of different grains, and these are the berries. So here's oatmeal as a whole grain, and millet, and popcorn. Here's sorghum. Where's wheat? Whole wheat is right here. Again, this is called a berry. How many of you cook or use these? Any? What do you do with them? You grind your own wheat and make bread. Do you use 100% of that? Or do you? I do too. It's a little too heavy. And well, that's because whole grain has a bitter taste to it. And so it's a little harder to eat. What else do some of you do with it? Do you? You'll mix half and half. All right. Quinoa has kind of become very popular. I don't love the taste, just bland. It needs some work. You add it to other things and then it tastes better. Right. One more person. Any of these? Go ahead. Just plain popcorn. Okay. All right. For some reason, we think ancient grains have some magical properties, and they really don't. Whole grains are whole grains. Some grains we have modified over the years. They've morphed a little bit. There's no good evidence that it's harmful. Like there's no evidence that way wheat has been bred and changed over the years. Does it cause more celiac disease or gluten intolerance? A lot of popular theories, but none of them have really been proven. But here's some more whole grains. But what I want to show you is here's a list, and this is eating a whole cup. I like in the winter months, I like to just buy barley. You buy it in the plastic bags where the other beans are, and I just boil it till it's soft, and I have that for hot cereal. And it, add some flavoring to it, but it's a great way to get in more whole grains. As I finish the grain piece, I want you to keep 2 things in your mind. Eating more whole grains, so they have more nutritional value overall, and getting more fiber. So this slide is showing you how much fiber is in different grains. How many calories? So spelt, most of them around 250, some are a little higher, a little lower. Spelt is the highest in fiber. Kamut, this asterisk means there are different types of wheat. White rice has very little whole grain in it. Well, yeah, whole grain and little fiber as well. Quinoa, not as high as others, but still it's a whole grain and has another nutritional value. Here's whole wheat. It's up high. I didn't put these in order of highest to lowest. Questions about that? I have never cooked with amaranth or millet. I'll eat rye bread, but I don't cook with it. Sometimes I'll have buckwheat pancakes. Yeah. If you don't like them, don't make yourself eat them. Enjoy what you eat. Was there a hand over here? Yeah. I was asked that question the other day, and I used to be able to answer that question. In terms of nutritional value, not really. Okay. Here's some suggestions on how to get more whole grains in your diet. I got them from the International Food Information Council. When you read a food label, look for the word whole grain, or look for the word whole wheat, and 100% whole grain. Beware of multigrain. It can be made out of lots of grains, but they could be refined grains. So just because it says grain, it doesn't mean it's a whole grain. Stone ground does not mean that it's a whole ground. 100% wheat, that means it's just made out of wheat, but it could be totally refined wheat. 7 grains, it can have 15 grains in there. If they're not whole grains, they're not going to be high in fiber, and they're not going to have the whole grain in them. Or just a bran. Now, they can refine a grain and add bran back in, And if it's in the reasonable ratio of what originally was there, and if they add germ back in, then they can call it a whole grain, but they can't take and refine a grain and put a whole bunch of bran in it and then call it a whole grain, because that's not accurate anymore. As much as possible, substitute a whole grain product for a refined product. If you like brown or wild rice instead of white rice, that would be great. If you can have a whole wheat bread instead of refined bread, that would be great. I make my own whole wheat bread as well. I use the Lion House recipe, and I do it about half and half. If I do more whole wheat, it's just too bitter for me. When I need to eat grilled cheese sandwiches, I have white bread and refined bread, because that's the comfort food from childhood. Choose a whole grain breakfast, or eat oatmeal more often. We'll talk some more about that in just a second. Talked about adding barley or other wheat berries to your breakfast, or add them to salads. Popcorn for a snack, like was said up here. Try cooking with whole grains and adding them to different things. Just try one that doesn't look too intimidating. If you want to be noble and brave, or you already do that, and you look up recipes for amit or millet, and you like that, that's great. We're not as familiar with some of these, and so our taste buds might or might not enjoy them. Okay, let's just look at the fiber content of grains that we might eat. All bran cereal is 9 grams of fiber, and that's only a half of a cup. It's not a whole grain, but it's a high fiber cereal because they put a lot of bran in there. It's mostly bran. Spaghetti, whole wheat spaghetti, 6 grams of fiber. There's only maybe 1 gram of fiber in refined spaghetti. I don't like whole wheat spaghetti, so I don't eat. My whole grain is not, spaghetti is not going to be whole grain for me. It's going to be refined grain. Cooked barley, a cup is 6 grams of fiber. Bran flakes, quinoa is 5. Rye bread is not as high. Whole wheat bread is maybe 2 or 3 grams of fiber per slice. Brown rice. So these are a little bit higher, but adding more whole grains to your diet will help bring up your total fiber. How we doing? Here's my favorite breakfast cereal. It doesn't have it on the label anywhere, but there's 45 grams of whole grain per serving, and there's 6 to 7 grams of fiber per serving. So I'm getting almost on my whole gram, all of my whole grain in 25 to 27 biscuits, and I probably a few more than that, probably about that. Here's multi-grain Cheerios. It's multi-grain. It has 28 grams of whole grain, so it's another type of whole grain. But it's a little bit less fiber, but it's close. Both of them, in my mind, are a healthy choice. Even though there's some sugar on here, I guarantee if I bought plain shredded wheat, I would be adding sugar to it to enjoy it. Probably I'm eating less sugar by having them sugar it for me. Here's Ora wheat whole grain. It's 100% whole wheat. It tells you that there's 48 grams of grains, whole grains in there. If you read the fine print, you have to eat 2 slices of bread to get there. But 1 slice is 3 grams of fiber. But the information right here is for 2. And it contains wheat and soy milk. It has whole wheat flour. And then the rest of these are probably refined. When should you eat fiber? Try adding something to every meal that you eat. Add some fruit to your breakfast if you don't. Try having a whole grain bread, or one that's a little higher in whole grain. Bread or cereals, or adding other grains to breakfast. Lunch, try having a whole grain bread for a sandwich. Add some vegetables, add some fruit to your lunch. If once a month you eat potato chips for lunch, call that a vegetable. If it's every day, do not call it a vegetable. Dinner, try whole grain rice, brown or wild rice. Add potatoes, vegetables. Eat salad with your dinner. Add beans and legumes to your dinner more often. Snacks, bring fruits and vegetables for snacks, or popcorn or whole grain crackers. If you don't do this on a regular basis and it doesn't sound appealing, don't try to totally flip your diet. It will not go well. But try adding a few things and see if you enjoy it. And down the road, keep adding different things. And over time, your diet will improve, and it's likely to be more sustainable. Okay, in the last few minutes that we have, I want to talk about fiber supplements, and I'll try to save time for some questions. These are the most common fiber supplements that are out there. So this is a type of fiber. It's primarily a soluble fiber. It's metamucil. Benefiber has wheat dextrin, and Citrusel has methylcellulose, and inulin. Fiber Choice has inulin. This is how much fiber there is in a serving. So here's my last slide. Here, it looks busy, but I'll try to keep it simple. Here are soluble fibers. Here's wheat bran, here's wheat dextrin, here's inulin and methylcellulose. So all of these right here, well, except for inulin was here. And then these are fibers that, this is where psyllium is found. So all bran cereal is wheat bran. Benefiber is high in wheat dextrin. Fiber Choice is inulin. Fiber or Citrusel is methylcellulose, and metamucil here is psyllium. Beta glucan has some healthy benefits, and we usually eat it by eating oats. What I want you to look at is down here at the bottom. So eating a lot of these things found in food can lower your blood cholesterol, but only these three over here, the guar gum, which is mostly eating food, or guar beans, and eating oatmeal, and metamucil, all of those can lower your cholesterol. Most of us take these supplements for a laxative effect, right? And when we look at constipation, methylcellulose and psyllium are the only two that have been shown to do that. So if you notice that the cholesterol lowering and the glycemic control, all three of these have that benefit. If your goal is more regularity, then you can look at these supplements. If your goal is a healthier diet, the fiber supplements aren't going to do that. Eating more fruits and vegetables and whole grains is where you're going to see the benefit. Are there any questions or comments? Yeah.
Fiber with grains, if you're trying to do like high protein, low carb.
You can't.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of conflicting information out
There
there.
is. There are some potential benefits with a high protein, low carbohydrate diet. Sometimes we call it the keto diet. It's a nutritionally incomplete diet. And you would need to take vitamin and mineral supplements. Sometimes it lowers cholesterol or triglycerides, sometimes it doesn't. It often brings improvement in blood sugar if you have diabetes because you're eating far less carbohydrate. It's not, I don't know of any health association, the Diabetes Association, the Cancer Societies, the, what have I missed? Cancer, diabetes, heart disease. None of them recommend a high animal-based diet. They all recommend a plant-based diet. So it's popular. It's usually not recommended by health professions or professional associations. You can't get adequate fiber by eating this diet. What else? Yeah. Then you're getting more fiber. Nutritionally, they're not much different than a lot of candy bars. But if you enjoy them, enjoy them for a snack. You can look at products like that and see how many more grams of fiber you're eating by doing that. They might have a little more fiber than a candy bar, but probably not a lot.
Yeah, I listened to a natural guy on a podcast not too long ago. They tried to make the argument that, yeah, you and me, our bodies cannot digest this fiber, but they said that the bacteria and so forth in our gut love to eat it. And if we didn't feed them with fiber, then they would start to eat parts of our stomach glands. Do you know if that's true or not?
The last sentence was not true. You were fine until that last sentence. We're outnumbered by bacteria, but I think like 100 to 1. We are a living environment for bacteria and microbes. And most of them, or a lot of them, are in our intestinal tract. Some fibers, we call them fermentable. And so we lack the enzyme to digest fiber, period. But we have trillions of bacteria that live in our intestinal tract, and some of them can break down some fibers. And that's called fermentation. They can take them from carbohydrate to something called short chain fatty acids. Short chain fatty acids are really healthy for us and for them. And so that's a great benefit. We absorb, I did what? Oh, yes, thank you. Oh, yep, right here. That's right. So poorly fermented, rarely fermented, not fermented, really. I thought it was in there. We don't absorb a lot of the calories, but we keep bacteria healthy, and we have a healthy population of bacteria that probably imparts a healthy benefit for us. So a healthy, but the bacteria cannot eat our stomach or intestinal lining. That would be news to me. Yes. I'm not sure. She does too. I know they're really high in calories. So yeah, but look up grape nuts and see, just Google it and ask how much whole grain they have and how much fiber they have. Yeah. But don't stop eating them if you like them. Keep eating them. We need to enjoy what we eat. Any more questions? Well, thank you for coming, and I'll be here for a few more minutes if you have any questions.